Why do something so politically damaging to the Prime Minister in removing yourself from cabinet?
The math doesn't add up. And frankly, I think that my government needs to be honest with Canadians.
This guy is out there telling millions of Canadians and swing voters that the Carney government has been lying to them. Stephen Guilbeault's resignation opened a new wave of political problems for Mark Carney, and it only got worse when Elizabeth May put the Liberals on notice that she will never vote with them again after they flat out lied to her. Now Guilbeault has decided to lay everything out and throw Mark Carney directly under the bus, reinforcing one thing Canadians are starting to see very clearly. You cannot take his word on anything. Let's take a look.
Hi there. Good to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
My pleasure, Vashi.
Have you had any regrets since your decision?
No, I've not.
Why not?
It's a tough decision. I mean, as a cabinet minister, you have a responsibility to tell your prime minister what you feel is the right thing or the wrong thing to do. And if you disagree with a policy or a decision by the government in our parliamentary system, then as a cabinet minister, your only recourse is to leave. And this is what I did.
So I had read a story, and maybe it was wrong, but it seemed, well placed the night before you quit, essentially saying, a source close to you was saying that you were going to remain in cabinet because you felt you could have more influence essentially over the direction of climate policy or what was to come than outside of cabinet. Less than 24 hours later, you quit. What changed in that period?
I mean, from the first moment I saw a draft of the agreement, the memorandum of understanding between the federal government and Alberta, I voiced my strong opposition, and I told people, I told those people who were with me that I understood that me opposing this would have some consequences, i.e., me leaving cabinet. And from that day on, Tuesday, Wednesday, tried to work like, are there changes that could be made to the agreement? But by then it was pretty baked in, and the changes that were made were largely cosmetic and didn't change the nature of the agreement. Like I felt, and I feel, we left a lot on the table for not getting a lot in return. This idea that we have to abandon our clean electricity regulation that will help us clean up our electricity grid across the country for decades to come in exchange for Alberta putting a better price on pollution. They already have to do that because of the federal pricing system. So we're not getting anything in return. Alberta's not giving Canadians a better deal out of that.
Okay, so there was a lot in that first segment. So first off, his point about, well, if you oppose a policy of the government, then you should leave cabinet. Well, that does sound like a very far left thing to do. Well, I don't agree with this and I'm going to throw a temper tantrum, so I'm going to leave. Yeah, so that's one thing. So I don't buy that that's the only thing. I really don't. That, well, I disagree with the pipeline, so therefore I'm out. Don't buy it. Especially when it comes to Vashi's source about he was going to stay in cabinet and then all of a sudden he wasn't. So that was the first part. The second part is he said something in there that's very telling, and it's starting to really solidify all of these pieces of information that we're getting, that we're hearing from independent sources, seemingly, and it's starting to come together. So remember, we heard from iPolitics and even from a CBC article that people from inside the Liberal government are saying that Mark Carney is running this like a CEO. And from the outside, we've been saying he's running this like a CEO. But insofar as that he has this inner circle, which Tim Hodgson, the energy minister, seems to be in. And if he's running this like a CEO, then there's about 5 or 6 people that are on his quote unquote senior leadership team, his senior management team. And those are the people that he hammers out these policies with. And we've just had that confirmed from somebody that was inside of cabinet. Cabinet is supposed to be the inner circle, right? They're the people that are supposed to work on these policies, discuss them, and then come to an agreement. You have all your arguments in there, and then when you're finished that, you come out as a united front in support of it. But Guilbeault said that he only saw this a couple of days before that this was actually announced. And he said, well, I tried to voice some opposition to this, and I knew what that would mean. I knew what that would mean if I voiced opposition to this. I don't think he thinks that he, was going to voluntarily leave cabinet. I think there's a couple of things going on there, but it also shows that cabinet did not even see this prior to a couple of days before it being announced. So what does that tell you? That tells you Mark Carney is not sharing and discussing these policy decisions, these initiatives with cabinet at large. He's discussing it with his inner circle and then saying, here it is, folks. And then you don't really have an opportunity to actually voice against it. One of the things that we were actually taught in management training, and I think this is a very good tip for anybody out there, is when you're a manager, when you're a leader, and you're going to be having a discussion to make a decision about something, and you bring your team in and you all sit down, the worst thing that a manager can do is say, okay, folks, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make a big decision on this. Here's my take, blah, 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 blah. What does everybody else think? Do not do that. Why? Because you've already eliminated a lot of the avenues of discussion, because your team is going to think, well, the boss has already decided this, so I guess I can't really talk against that. You need to go in there and say, we need to make a decision on this. I'm interested to hear what everybody says. After you hear what everybody says, then you make your declaration of what you think is the correct path. Because then everybody has a comfortable space to actually feel that, I can voice my opinion and I don't have to worry about speaking against the boss because I don't know what he's going to say. So this is kind of the same thing where Mark Carney is making these decisions with his inner circle, and then you're giving it out to the cabinet and saying, hey, everybody, here's a memorandum of understanding. It's pretty much all done. What do you think? Well, what are they supposed to think? Okay, well, it's basically done. What do you want me to say? Just like Guilbeault said, well, I had conversations, some pretty frank conversations with Mark Carney, and he was basically said, sit down and shut up. So I think, and this is speculation, I think that Guilbeault left for, the policies on the pipelines, but the fact that Mark Carney and the way he was running caucus, because that puts it together with the feedback that we've been hearing from these other sources and these other publications that have been reporting on this, that Mark Carney runs this like a CEO, doesn't take people's opinion into account. And remember, he's running this like a corporation, which is not a democracy, but the Canadian government is.
I have supported the Pathways project to capture carbon and store it in the ground for many years, but people have to understand that it's not a magic bullet. It will help reduce pollution from the oil sands sector by about 12%. It's not 50%, certainly not 100%. It's 12%. And 12% is not nothing, but it will still make oil one of the most carbon intensive in the world. Like right now, it's about 10 times more pollution intensive than oil that's produced in Newfoundland, for example. So it's going to be slightly better, but it'll be nowhere near what's produced even in other parts of Canada, let alone the North Sea or elsewhere in the world.
Now, just to touch on, not the carbon capture, but what Mark Carney said at the end of that first section of his answer, where he said, what is Alberta giving in return? And his answer, I'm sorry, is one of the stupidest that I've heard in a while. Probably dumber than some of the things that Mark Carney has said. What is Alberta giving back? What is that thing? What's the whole purpose of a pipeline, folks? It's on the tip of my... Oh, right. Money and jobs. Money and jobs is what is coming back from that. You open up this pipeline, you vastly increase the throughput of what Alberta can actually pump out in terms of gas. You vastly increase the throughput of what Alberta can take out of the ground because of the elimination of the oil and gas cap. So there's a lot of things that are actually coming back to Canadians. Wealth being one of them, jobs being another, security being another. And we open up new business customers across the Atlantic and across the Pacific. It's the other side. because now we can actually ship this oil out. And there'll be a lot of customers out in the Pacific. You can bet on that. So for him to say that Alberta's not giving anything back, pretty sure you're mistaken there.
The grand bargain and all that you just said, we put to your colleagues, including the person who succeeded you in this position in the days in the wake of your exit, on multiple occasions in great detail, like how the thesis that they seem to be putting forward is the increase, whatever we're able to negotiate in the form of an increase to the industrial price on carbon will mitigate the impact of the rollback of these other policies. Is that possible?
Well, I mean, not with the current agreement. To mitigate the losses of measures we're willing to leave on the table in order to get this agreement with Alberta, the price on pollution would have to be almost 3 times as high as what is currently being proposed. So there's an Environment Canada estimates that to get to the same result in terms of reduction of pollution just using industrial carbon pricing and taking clean electricity regulation out of the equation, you'd have to have a price on pollution of about $400 a ton. And we're talking right now about $130 a ton. So, I mean, the math doesn't add up. And frankly, I think that my government needs to be honest with Canadians. With the rollbacks that we've seen over the past few months on different climate change measures that have been adopted over the years by me and some of my predecessors, it is impossible to see how we achieve our 2030 targets. And we knew it was going to be difficult. When I was minister, you and I have had this conversation. We knew it was going to be challenging. It's impossible now. And I think we need to come clean. We need to tell Canadians it won't work. We won't get there. And the Prime Minister, he's the Prime Minister. If he wants another strategy, he wants another approach, he can do that. But we also have to tell Canadians what's the new plan and what does that plan lead us to. And right now, even achieving net zero, so carbon neutrality by 2050, it is very hard for me to see how we get there with what has been announced so far.
Now, the way I would advise you to be watching this is what Guilbeault is saying true? That's actually relevant. I would advise that you watch this from a much more, I would say, entertaining vantage point, which is 2 people you don't necessarily like. It's like that really annoying couple that you like, or sorry, that you know, but you don't like either of them, and you find them both really annoying, and then you see them fighting with each other. And it's somewhat satisfying that they're fighting with each other because you both find them extremely annoying. So it doesn't really matter what either of them is saying in this regard, because we know we can't trust Guilbeault on because of his stances on the consumer carbon tax and all the stuff that was happening before, and we know we can't trust Mark Carney for, well, obvious reasons, and all of the lies and promises that he's broken. So it's fascinating to see this play out. Because what Stephen Guilbeault is saying to Canadians at large, and this is the beauty of this, folks, it's not a conservative, it's not the NDP, it's not the Bloc. It is a staunch liberal, Trudeau-era cabinet minister, Trudeau-era environmental minister, and Mark Carney-era cabinet minister, and Mark Carney supporter. He supported and endorsed Mark Carney when he was running for leadership. And this guy is out there telling millions of Canadians and swing voters that the Carney government has been lying to them. That's the part that just blows my mind on this. Well, we have to be honest with Canadians. Well, the fact that you have to say that tells everybody that the government has been dishonest. And when he says, well, Mark Carney, he's the Prime Minister, he can do whatever he wants, but, he has to tell Canadians what the new plan is. And we're not going to meet our 2030 targets. We're not going to meet our 2050 targets. Okay, I don't really care if you're accurate or not. But what I do care about is that you are actively speaking against the credibility and the agenda of the current Liberal government and the current Prime Minister of Canada. That's what's going on here. And you're actually speaking against Captain Net Zero himself, Mark Carney. So this is crazy, folks, that Guilbeault is out there just putting this out there. Liberals are being dishonest with Canadians, and we lied during the election, and yada, yada, yada. So this is better than absolutely anything that Pierre Poilievre or any of the Conservatives could say on mainstream media. The fact Guilbeault is saying it, that's the chef's kiss in all of this.
So you think even that target is in jeopardy now?
Yes. Yes.
Did you convey this at any point to the Prime Minister? Like, was there, not to say that you would disclose all the details, but like, has there been a frank conversation about this between you and the Prime Minister specifically?
Last week, I've had a couple of conversations with the Prime Minister, and they were very honest and frank and respectful. Where I told them many of the things that I'm telling you now, and where eventually I told them that I was no longer the person to be able to help him continue support his agenda on this issue. Now, why stay in caucus? Why stay?
You beat me to the punch, right? Because, and I'll frame the question if you don't mind, because I think a lot of Canadians watching would ask that question. If you don't feel like you can defend, on principle, essentially, you have to resign from cabinet because of the agenda that they're pursuing. How can you stay in the government? Period.
Well, I have a profound disagreement with the Prime Minister on how he and his team want to continue moving forward on climate change. And as I said, I don't see the plan. I don't see the math right now. And maybe they can prove me wrong in the coming months. That being said, I still think that the best person to serve Canadians and to help us, to guide us through those difficult times we're going through is Mark Carney. Without Prime Minister Carney, we would not have had the historic investment in the arts and culture that was in the last budget. We certainly wouldn't have measures that are continue to support Canadians like childcare, like dental care. The Conservative Party of Canada have said time and time again that they would get rid of those measures. These measures are helping people, like thousands of dollars back in the pockets of Canadians.
Okay, have to stop it there. So this is where I do start to care what he says. So even though he's had conversations with Mark Carney and told him everything, Carney just says, nope, we're fine. Okay. It's a bit weird knowing what is in Mark Carney's literature that he's authored himself, but and his history of pursuing net zero, as Desiree Fixer lays out in the multiple interviews we've had with her. But he then says, Mark Carney is still the best person to run. So this tells me that he doesn't want to leave caucus because his principles aren't that strong, because you fade into utter obscurity if you leave caucus, because he's just going to be an independent at that point. Or sit with Elizabeth May, whoop-de-doo. So that would be very problematic, and it would be very, very lonely, because nobody would talk to him at that point. I think he still wants his groupies to talk to him, and that's probably why. But then he says, well, the Conservatives would cut childcare and all this stuff. The Conservatives have never said that. Haven't said that at all. They were actually going to keep childcare. They were going to fix it, which is very different, but they weren't going to cut it. That was in Pierre's platform. What the Conservatives were going to do is take these stupidly architected programs and fix them and put some fiscal responsibility to them. And probably even expand that childcare program so that you're not actually forcing them to close, and you're allowing more private childcares in there, so that way in the rural communities where the Liberals don't give a damn about the voters because they're all Conservative, they'll be able to take advantage of this program as well, but not in a way that is going to be completely saddling Canadians with a bunch of taxes. So that's not what they said. And the fact that he said that, the Conservatives said there's many times. No, they haven't. They haven't said they'd cut it once. So nice try there.
So
why do something, pardon the interruption, why do something so politically damaging to the Prime Minister in removing yourself from cabinet? Why not stay around the table and fight for the things that you're describing tonight?
I mean, I've tried to do that with as much tact as I could. I didn't leave the room throwing grenades around and accusing people of this and that. I think I've been very respectful of the Prime Minister and the government, but I felt that I owed it to him, to my colleagues, and to my constituent to be true to myself. And to be able to look myself in the mirror. Like, I don't know, Vashi, how I would have been able to say with a straight face that this is an agreement that I can support. Now, I support the Prime Minister's intention of making sure that all Canadians feel they have a place in the Federation, but we played in that movie before. We bought a pipeline. We announced that before the 2019 election, and we lost all our seats in Alberta and Saskatchewan in the 2019 election.
But maybe because it wasn't about the seats, like, how is it okay to buy that pipeline but not build another one? Like, you stood by that Prime Minister then.
Actually, I never supported that pipeline.
You didn't, but you still stayed in cabinet.
No, I wasn't in cabinet when that decision was made. And when I ran in 2019, I specifically said that I disagreed with the pipeline, but I agreed with many of the other things that the Prime Minister of the time, Prime Minister Trudeau, was doing, specifically on climate change and nature. And as you know, politics is about compromise. In a country of 40 million people, you know you're not going to win all your battles, but at some point you have to draw a line in the sand and say this is a place where I can't go, and respectfully say that I have to leave cabinet.
So that's a bunch of word salad, and Vashi did corner him because she said, well, you stood by the previous Prime Minister when a pipeline was bought. You stayed in cabinet. Well, I wasn't in cabinet but you were in cabinet after. You were in cabinet after. That's what Vashi's saying. So no doubt she was just like, I'm not gonna play semantics here. I'm just gonna move on. And that's what she does very well. She knows which battles to actually, continue to harp on, and those just to leave. But everybody knows that Stephen Guilbeault was Trudeau's environment minister. And her question was very pointed. How could you stay in cabinet after he bought this pipeline? You joined cabinet after that pipeline was bought. So, yeah, that's what this is. And then, he's trying to say, well, it's a bit compromised. So Trudeau was doing other things. And then he said something that really bothered me. He said, well, Mark Carney's, trying to, say that, all Canadians are welcome in Federation, or something to that effect. And he said, we tried that game before. Now, I don't know if he's implying that we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be welcoming and allowing all Canadians to really have a place in this Federation. That's kind of where this is going for me. Now, he is from Quebec, so I don't know if the separatist movement is having an effect on him there, but that was a shocking thing for him to say. And this is one of the reasons why many Albertans are so ticked off at Ottawa, because of statements like that. You don't speak for all Canadians, Guilbeault. I'm an Ontarian. We elected 52 Conservatives. Everybody that I interact with in Ontario loves Alberta, loves the people in Alberta, and loves everybody out west. There's a lot of friends of Alberta that live in Ontario, that live out in the Maritimes as well. So stop making this a east versus west thing. It's a Liberals versus Alberta thing. Nothing more.
Do you think that you can remain in you plan to remain? Like, do you plan to run in the next election, for example, under the Liberal banner? Like, do you or are you seriously considering your future outside of just cabinet because of this?
I plan to stay a member of the Liberal caucus and to continue play an active role on these issues that are important to me, certainly the environment, climate change, nature, culture as well. I was culture minister twice, 2019 to 21, and until recently, I was climate identity, culture and nature. I honestly, the dust is still settling since my decision of last week, but I'm definitely there for the coming months.
So you haven't decided beyond that?
Let's talk. Let's have another conversation.
I will definitely invite you.
Okay, what that says to me, folks, if I'm reading under the lines, and again, this is speculation, is either Mark Carney has told him, you're not going to be running again, or Guilbeault has said, I'm not running again. One or the other. But I don't think he's running again after this. I really don't. That's the case I get from this. Because otherwise, what's the problem? Oh yeah, you know, I'll stay on. No, I intend to run again. The fact that he didn't answer that question, I think, says a lot.
One of the things that was difficult with the agreement was the fact that we had made an agreement with Elizabeth May from the Greens to support us in the budget by not including a specific subsidy to oil and gas. And it's explicitly stated in the budget that we wouldn't do that. And then we turn around 2 weeks later and we put it in this agreement with Alberta. That was, I was one of the person who was asked to work with Ms. May.
Did you help convince her to support the budget?
I did. I wasn't the only one, but I did, and I felt that this was not a genuine gesture on our part. She supported us in good faith. I don't think she will support us moving forward. I think that bridge has been burned, and to me that was something that was difficult to accept. I think, yes.
So that part was really telling, in that it's not just that Mark Carney and the Liberals are lying to Canadians. It's not just that Mark Carney and the Liberals lied to Elizabeth May. It's that Mark Carney and the Liberals are lying to their own cabinet ministers, folks. That's what that means. Now, the one thing about Trudeau's Liberals is that when all of this garbage was going on and all this corruption, everyone that was seeing what was going on with the ArriveCan, with the SDTC, infrastructure, all of these scandals, everyone knew that they were lying their butts off to Canadians, right? That wasn't in question. But there was no sense that they were lying to each other. That's on a different level. So the fact that Mark Carney and his inner circle are actively lying to their own cabinet, like that's supposed to be the inner circle. Evidently it's not. So Mark Carney's inner circle of like maybe 5 or 6 people, whatever it is actively lying to their cabinet ministers to play politics with other parties. That should concern even Liberal voters. Why? Because it demonstrates a pattern that this guy doesn't care about what the truth actually means. He just cares about his own agenda. Now, most conservatives will say, duh, we know that already. You're not telling us anything we don't know. But this message isn't for you guys. This message is for the swing voters and it's for the Liberals. If Mark Carney is willing to lie to his own cabinet ministers, how can Canadians trust a word that he says? And Minister or ex-minister Stephen Guilbeault just put that on a billboard sign with flashing lights and fireworks surrounding it for all Canadians to hear. So, talking about the political damage being done here, the fact that he's saying this on mainstream media, which will be a lightning rod for many people since he was a very polarizing figure and a very public figure under the Trudeau government and Mark Carney's government, I think a lot of these swing voters and a lot of these Liberals and progressives are going to be paying attention to this. And they're going to see that Mark Carney cannot be trusted from people on the right or even people on the left.